Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. We're going to talk about comics. We're going to talk about the comic book industry and how the hell we got here. Like why everything has become so political. I don't like it. I don't like it. And I'm not saying that there's not enough room for people to espouse political opinions or for people to create comics for underrepresented groups. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I don't like every damn thing in the comic book industry becoming political. Everything. You know, the comics themselves, the creators, the promotion of the comics, everything is political. The media outlets that support publishers, everyone is absolutely obsessed with politics and virtue signaling, and you know, it's become very divisive. It's become very hateful. Comics is not fun anymore. You know, the only thing worse than comics at this point, I think, is tabletop gaming. God, tabletop gaming has gone completely insane. And the thing is that people do turn to these kinds of hobbies to get away from the real world. I mean, we're living in a dystopian nightmare right now. Let's be honest. Like, we're living a science fiction film. We are, and it gets seemingly worse every month. You know, it's just more and more ridiculous. And, you know, maybe it's just that, you know, comics and the comic book industry are reflecting, you know, the anxiety and, you know, hatred that we're feeling in the real world. I don't know. I don't know, man. But it's really depressing. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. Couple things here. I feel like the comic book industry is being held up for ransom, for sure. And, you know, speaking of which, Diamond has been hit by a ransomware attack. I don't even understand why anybody would go after Diamond, because they really don't have anything of value anymore. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But really what kicked this off was going back to Superman again. And it's not about the bisexual Superman or DC Comics virtue signaling or anything like that, but it is in some way. The former colorist of Superman, Gabe Eltaeb, I think his name is, had some parting words for Jim Lee when he left. And I never thought we would get to this place, because I remember when I first started reading comics in the 1980s, independent comics and the comic book scene in general was a lot of people working in comics. A lot of creators were advocates for freedom of speech. That was a big deal. And there were some comic book creators back then that had some really crazy ideas, but whatever. You read their books, and for the most part, people didn't know what their opinions were. And then came social media. Now, you can't escape the opinions of creators. In fact, I've told people, if they want to enjoy comic books or any kind of creative medium at this point, I would suggest you don't follow your favorite comic book creators, your favorite showrunners on animated series, people who work on role-playing games or video games that you enjoy, because you're going to see a lot of shit that you wish you could unsee, because it's going to taint your opinion of their work. People are absolutely allowed to express their opinions for sure, but you know, it's just gotten more and more toxic. DC Comics has been kind of at the center of a lot of this lately, and it's so weird, because I remember a couple of years ago, everybody's like, well, Marvel's kind of gotten very political and they've made some questionable decisions, but DC's still holding strong. And then they brought in Daniel Cherry III, who is an admitted activist, and then everything has become activist focused. Of course it has. You know, we did a video talking before about, Superman, and how Ethan Van Sciver believes Superman's being changed up to John Kent so they can skip out on paying royalties to Schuster and Siegel's families, which is possible. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not possible. This is totally possible. But I'm gonna read this article here from Bounding in the Comics talking about Gabe Eltaeb leaving Superman and parting words he had for Jim Lee. And Jim Lee, I used to think, Jim Lee and Eric Larson, I used to think were, a couple of the good guys. These were guys that were, huge names in comics back when I first started reading comics regularly. And I always thought Larson especially was an advocate for free speech. I don't think he really is. But all of this weird shit going on in the comic book industry right now, it's depressing as hell. And you can't get away from it. Like you try to get away from it. You're like, well, I'm just going to go make my own comics, my own little corner of the internet. And they follow you over there. They do. We've seen it happen. They follow us. What you doing? What you doing? Making comics? You must be Comicsgate. What you doing there? How much money did you make? Yeah. Or, blacklisted from events or, just dumb shit. Just dumb shit. And it's depressing. It's depressing. Let's talk about this because I agree with Gabe Eltaeb here. Now, you don't have to work for any company you don't want to work for. We've talked about this before with employees working at Spotify and Kickstarter having problems with the content being produced on those platforms, and Image Comics wanting to unionize. The comic book industry is being held hostage. The readers are being held hostage by politics. It's awful. Aren't you tired of it? And I'm tired of them, but I got to tell you the truth. I'm tired of it on both sides. Just because you don't like all the politics in comics doesn't mean you necessarily are going to agree with, comics that are just all espousing right-wing politics or whatever. It's just like, could we just tell good stories and knock this shit off, And I think it's just with comics, I think they almost need the drama because they're losing so much ground to manga. They're losing so much ground to video games, other forms of entertainment, the mainstream comic book industry. And it's almost like they have to shock and anger people to get people to care. And eventually people are just going to walk away completely. They're going to be like, screw all this. Screw all of this. I'm out. I'm tired of the drama. I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of being held hostage by people over freaking politics and freaking comic books. It's so ridiculous. Anyway, Gabe Eltaeb. This is coming from Bounding in the Comics, by the way. Gabe Eltaeb, colorist working on Superman, son of Kal-El, who recently announced his intention to walk away from DC after his contract was up due to the change in Superman's motto, was revealed what his parting words were to his once esteemed publisher. So this is what he said in the video, and I'll put a link. I'll put a link to that in the comments. He said that he actually wrote to Jim Lee. Eltaeb used a football analogy. He said, if you're not directly coaching, you're allowing things to play out, i.e. losses and players' missteps are caused by failure of leadership. I don't think there's any leadership at DC Comics or Marvel. I think they're just existing. Eltaeb doesn't know or even hazard to guess if DC is coaching or allowing the woke agenda to proliferate. He's not part of the executive meetings. In his words, they're above his pay grade. Again, Jim Lee does not need to be working for DC Comics. Jim Lee could go out on his own, start his own company again. Look at Todd McFarlane. Todd McFarlane's still making millions and millions of dollars. And Jim Lee kind of noped out and just sold Wildstorm to DC. He took the easier path. He moved on to disclose his side of a conversation he had with DC publisher Jim Lee via text messages, but prefaced this revelation by urging his supporters not to go after Lee because he's a good family man who Eltaeb respects. Yeah, I don't think anybody should be harassed or doxxed or any of that stuff. Adding he wasn't going to divulge what his old boss said back to him out of respect for his privacy and for DC as a company. Probably it wouldn't have played well. Let me put it to you that way. He said that Eltaeb stated his mission is simply to vent on behalf of fans of DC and comics who are picked on by leftist creators and editors, call them all sorts of names because they don't have an argument. And what happens after a while? People just stop caring. They do, and they move on. One person Eltaeb didn't hold back on was Bleeding Cool founder Rich Johnston, whom he described to Lee as a piece of human trash or human filth due to his messaging of Eltaeb for a scoop on what happened between the colorist and DC. Yeah, Johnston is an ambulance chaser for sure. Every once in a while he does the journalism, but for the most part he is an ambulance chaser, and I think he's actually delighted to watch people's careers burn down because it means he's getting traffic on his blog. One of these days I'm going to buy that blog. I don't know. I keep saying that, right? Who knows? This piece of human filth, Rich Johnson, is sniffing around to get info from me. Eltaeb began his message to Lee. I'm letting you know as a courtesy so you can be prepared and not let Rich hit you too hard. Who knows what he'll say? He's disgusting. Eltaeb went on to address his beef with DC over the change in Superman's motto. Even though I'm rightly pissed off at what you guys at DC have done with disrespecting America, I'd never betray you guys like this. I said what I had to say publicly because I'm not a coward. I'm not going to sneak around and talk to morons like Rich Johnston so he can cause chaos. You probably hate me and think I'm a fool. but he couldn't stay silent any longer. Again, this is holding comics hostage. You have to say and do the right thing as a creator, as a fan, or people like Rich Johnston or other bloggers will come after you. It's been proven time and time again. You're being held hostage. Talking about how Jim Lee's parents immigrated to America and how Gabe's parents immigrated. Even if the decision to remove the credit American culture had in creating Superman is out of your hands, it's so ungrateful for you to go along with it. I don't think he has a choice. I'm not saying he couldn't have spoke up, but he probably doesn't have a choice. In an explanation of why the flag meant so much to him, he talked about Gaddafi and his father escaping Gaddafi's socialist hellscape. Talked about Jim Lee's Korean family. Talked about Clark Kent. Great people pay for everything we have with the American way. Show some damn respect. Superman was founded by two Christian farmers from America's heartland. He got his physical abilities from his biological parents, but he got his morality, the thing that actually makes him a hero, from the Kents. That's the American way. Now, this is interesting. This tells me this conversation didn't go very well. Pointing at Lee, he noted that Lee has to live with the shame of sitting quietly while others took an axe to a legacy they didn't create and destroyed what generations that came before them in the comic medium bled to give us. Eltaeb closed by calling Lee one of his childhood heroes and thanking him for the opportunity he was granted years ago at Wildstorm. In conclusion, he stressed again he doesn't want fans contacting or going after Lee. He believes he is ultimately a good dude, not one of the far left weirdos. Yeah, and he's, cashing a check. He doesn't have to. Jim Lee is freaking Jim Lee. Jim Lee could leave DC tomorrow and go start his own company, and he would do so much better. And he'd be able to look at himself in the mirror, I think, a little bit easier every day too. But maybe he's just biding his time until he retires. I don't know. I'm actually shocked that Jim Lee, of the Image founders, that Jim Lee seemingly was the first one. I think he was the first one to nope out. Like, yeah, this business thing's real hard. Let me just sell Wildstorm. Let me just sell it to DC. This business thing is kind of hard. I don't want to do that. Anyway, speaking of being held hostage, Diamond, hit by ransomware attack. Who cares about Diamond? What? Diamond comic distributors and Alliance game distributors were hit by a ransomware attack on Friday, which took down their websites and affected order processes and communications. The company informed at least some stakeholders on Sunday. Our IT department and a team of third-party experts are working around the clock to address these issues and restore full operations. You sure they're not just doing it just to drum up some sympathy? Because Diamond's kind of like, Ransomware is a form of malware that locks access to data unless a ransom is paid. Why is a company like that? How are they? I don't know. A number of high-profile attacks have taken place this year, disrupting meat production, gasoline distribution, and other functions run by large companies. But to go after Diamond? To go after a comic book distributor that's already on death's door? Like, you sure they're not doing this themselves? I don't know. It's weird. Survey reported by New York Magazine found that over half of ransomware victims this year paid to regain access to their info. Only a quarter of them regained full access. Some functions are continuing. While some of our systems remain down, rest assured we're continuing to ship product and fill orders to the greatest extent we can. It's kind of weird that of all the industries that you're going to hit the flailing comic book direct market and a distributor that's having problems because it keeps losing clients to other distributors. And they're going to be like, well, we can't fulfill orders because, our system's down, ransomware. Yeah, that's it. I don't know. Whole damn industry is being held hostage. It is. Comics is being held hostage. People just need to I don't even know what to tell you. Walk away. Just walk away from it. Don't play the game. It's the only way things are going to change. No money, no industry. Just walk away. And I think a lot of people are going to walk away. I don't think you can save the mainstream comic book industry. I think it's pretty much done. And I mean, it's not done. They can keep reprinting shit. But as far as, the best ideas, the best years of the Western comic book industry, I think they're definitely in the rearview mirror. At least for Marvel and DC. I think the most exciting stuff is happening with independents. But if you're allowed to make independent comics, if you don't get dogpiled by the damn comic book media for being a wrong thinker and not kissing ass, I don't know. I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.